Mike Allen, and I'm a member of the board of the Ellensburg Rodeo Hall of Fame Association. We're going to be having some dinner here pretty quick, but I just want to welcome you all here, and I want to introduce you to some special guests that we have here tonight. First of all, we welcome Rochelle and Carolyn Bowman, who are seated right there. Raise your hands, ladies. Welcome. Good to see you. And Eddie Akridge and his family are right here. Welcome, folks. Glad to see you. Judy and Dan Ackley right here. Welcome. And of course, with us tonight, we have the descendants of the warrior chief of the Kittitas Band, the Nathan and Aronica families. Welcome, folks. If you'll join me for a moment of silence or a prayer, if you wish. This is the Cowboys' prayer, Badger Clark's version. Oh Lord, I've never lived where churches grow. I love creation better as it stood that day you finished it so long ago, and looked upon your work and called it good. I know I can find you in the light that sifts down through a church's tinted window panes, and yet I feel you near tonight in this dim, quiet starlight on the plains. Lord, just let me live my life as I've begun and give me work that's open to the sky. Make me a partner of the wind and the sun, and I won't ask a life that's soft or high. Lord, make me as big and open as the plains, as honest as the hoss between my knees, clean as the wind that blows behind the rains, free as the hawk that circles down the breeze. Lord, just keep an eye on all that's done and said, and right me sometimes when I turn aside, and guide me on the long, dim trail ahead that stretches upward toward the great divide. Amen. We have a buffet this evening, ladies and gentlemen. Would the Hall of Fame board members please raise your hands right now if you're on the board of the Hall of Fame so these folks can see who you are. Look around here. If you need assistance serving up with the buffet, folks, raise your hands again, you Hall of Fame. You ask one of these guys to, I didn't know you were on the board. You ask one of these folks to help you and they'd be glad to. And we want those who need assistance to be sure and get at the head of the line. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to ask our inductees to go serve themselves dinner, because that's one of the many fringe benefits you get for being inductees to the Ellensburg Rodeo Hall of Fame. Ladies and gentlemen, go ahead and keep working on your dessert, and our wait staff will continue to serve coffee and dessert here, and we're just kind of wrapping it up, but I'd like to get started on the program, and again, get started by thanking you all for coming out here tonight. This is a tremendous crowd, and I think it's a testament to these inductees that they drew this kind of a crowd. They got a lot of good friends out here, and we thank you all for coming. My name's Mike Allen, and I serve on the Hall of Fame board. And when I'm not over here doing this, I'm a history professor at the University of Washington in Tacoma, Washington. But I was born and raised here in Ellensburg, and have been involved in the Hall of Fame here for 14 years. We'd like to tell you a little bit at this point, and I know many of you are members of the Hall of Fame Association. We have many lifetime members here. I thought I'd just take a couple of minutes, tell you what we've been doing this year and what we're up to and what we've got planned for the future of the Ellensburg Rodeo Hall of Fame. One of the things that's going on right now is the Oral History Project, and several members are involved. Nip Tucker has taken the lead, and what we're doing is recording the memories and past experiences of people around here in the valley, and also inductees to the Hall of Fame about and their memories of the Ellensburg Rodeo. As a matter of fact, tomorrow morning there'll be a taping session, and this gentleman who's doing our camera work right now will be filming the inductees at the Western Village, and they'll be interviewed there. And so we've got an oral history collection, and we're building that, and that's going to be really nice to go to in the years to come. We also, of course, have the Arena Records sign down at the rodeo grounds, thanks to Sign Dog and their contribution of that sign, and we help work that. We have exhibits, but since we don't have a permanent museum, you know, we don't have a permanent exhibit. But we do have temporary exhibits. We have one right here. Tonight we're in the headquarters of the Ellensburg Rodeo. We've got an exhibit there, and at Western Village we will also have an exhibit this rodeo. But we don't often bring out our valuable artifacts for these temporary exhibits because they should be shown under security, and there should be climate control. And so we wait the day when we can have a permanent museum and you can see some of the wonderful objects and artifacts that we have. And we got some pretty good stuff. I'm sure you know we have the Maynard Linder rodeo programs, which he contributed. We have film footage. We've got a nice collection of film footage going all the way back to 1923. You saw some of that tonight. And we can probably make a documentary film someday, or that would be my ambition, and other board members, that we could make a documentary movie of the Ellensburg Rodeo. And we've got saddles. Deb Copenhaver gave us a Madison Square Garden saddle, and we've got an original Farrell saddle. We've got Schuyler Bennett's prize saddle from the county bronc riding in the 1930s. We've got outfits. We've got trick riding outfits. We've got some stuff from Monty, Montana. We've got the entire Ellensburg Rodeo Wranglerette collection. We've just got a lot of very nice artifacts, and what we need is a museum. Yeah, that's what I'm leading to here. What we need is a museum, and before you leave here tonight, I want you to take a look at that poster that's over there in the corner by the television set that I'm pointing to, and it's about the Boots of Fame, which will be the kickoff of our capital campaign. And we're working with a local artist, Austin Smith, who has built a mold for a cowboy boot, and there will be many of them, several of them. They're cowboy boots that stand 4 feet tall, and they'll be decorated by local artists. And so, you know, only here in Kittitas County is a cowboy boot an object de art, okay? But we're gonna have the Boots of Fame, and yeah. These will be displayed around town at local businesses and community gathering centers. They will be auctioned off, and so we're going to begin a capital campaign. We're a lot better financially off than we used to be. I mean, I can remember one rodeo where we asked all the board members to pay their dues so we could pay the bills after the banquet, and those days are over. Those days are over, but when you move into the capital portion of that kind of growth, then you're talking about a lot of money, and we're going to work on that. So keep your eyes and ears open, and we're going to have a museum here. It'll take us a while, but we're going to do it. I'd like to, at this time, introduce the board members of the Ellensburg Rodeo Hall of Fame, and hold your applause. And board members, as I call your name, if you would stand up, I'd sure appreciate that. These folks would like to meet you. Terry Phillip, who is our president, and Jenny Charlton, Bridget Clift, Rochelle Kramer, Joe Crawford, Barb Foster. Are you standing up, guys? Bob Kelly, Ken McCrae. Bertha Morrison is not here this evening, and we all send Bertha our best wishes and prayers. Tuffy's here, and she had an accident, but she's coming back. Joel Smith is here tonight. Nip Tucker, Julie Verdon, Jack Wallace, Jeff Whitney, and Stacy Young. Did I leave anybody out, guys? We okay? Let's give these guys a round of applause. I've got a few thank yous here and a few folks to acknowledge in the audience, and then we'll begin our induction program in about 5 or 10 minutes. I would like to thank the life members and annual members who are here this evening. I know there are several of you here. If you are not a member of the Ellensburg Rodeo Hall of Fame Association, Joe Crawford there, would you raise your hand, Joe? Joe will sign you up. You too can be a member of the Ellensburg Rodeo Hall of Fame Association. You can't be an inductee, though, just by talking to Joe, okay? But you could join the association as a member. You got to ride some broncs and do some other stuff before you can be an inductee. So we thank our membership. We thank our corporate and business table sponsors, who I announced earlier. Megan and her staff at the Ellensburg Rodeo office are a great help and have done a lot of work on this, especially a sellout banquet like this. The Ellensburg Rodeo Board has always been supportive, and President Bill Lau is president this year of the Rodeo Board. We have several Rodeo Board members who are here this evening, and we thank you fellows for your support and for the support of the Ellensburg Rodeo Board for the Hall of Fame. Scott and Joe Rep at their roping contribute 50%. How many of you went to the roping yesterday? Yeah. And Scott and Joe give half of the gate to the Ellensburg Rodeo Hall of Fame. And so that's one of the reasons we've got a bank account now. And we thank them for that. The Ellensburg Daily Record, Mike Johnston has just been true blue for it. Mike, where are you? Mike? Yeah. The Daily Record is the voice of the Ellensburg Rodeo Hall of Fame. Through all the changes, Mike has been a stalwart there and a supporter, and we had 3 gorgeous induction articles this year, front page stories, and we thank the Daily Record for that. Here at Central, Jerry Palmer is not here tonight. She's our caterer. She's in charge of food services. Brian Hillier over here at the media board. Don't you miss my slide projector, guys? I mean, isn't this awful? Don't you wish that slide projector was still showing those images up there? We've come a long way on images, too, and it's just a lot better show. And thanks, Brian, for that. And then Mr. Engel, who is our facilities coordinator here, and he's not here tonight either. Molly Morrow Photography. Dan Martin will be taking photographs tonight. The Bledsoe Washington Regional Archive, which is located on the CWU campus. And I don't know if you know this or not, but that's where the Hall of Fame artifacts are stored, at the Regional Archive of the state of Washington. So we have state-of-the-art storage facilities, and we can really take care of this stuff until we get a chance to put it in a permanent museum. Bridget Clift is the archivist at the State Archive, and she's a member of our board of directors, which works out very nicely for all of this. Barb Foster. Well, Barb did the flowers tonight, but did you notice those Frank Exner photographs that are back there from Frank Exner's collection? Barb has been working on those with Monty Exner and helping to preserve that, and she's just a terrific board member, and we're very grateful for that. And so with all of those people in mind who I've just thanked, please put your hands together for some thank yous for all these helpers. Now I'm going to introduce some honored guests that we have here this evening, in addition to our inductees who we will meet here shortly. I know, have members of the Ellensburg Rodeo Posse and the Ellensburg Rodeo Wranglerettes and the Kittitas County Ropers. Put your hands together. They're all inductees to the Ellensburg Rodeo Hall of Fame. Mr. John P. Foster is here, an inductee to the Hall of Fame in the participant category. I'm going to name several Kittitas County families, Kittitas Valley families, all of whom are inductees, and after I finish reading the names, I'd like you folks to stand up so we can put our hands together for you. Members of the Anderson, Cook, Driver, Ferguson, Fitterer, Gage, McEwen. Does this sound like a lot of roads out in northeast Kittitas County here? We're going to add one family tonight to that list too. McEwen, McManamy, Minor, Morrison, Thomas, and Snebley families. Stand up, folks. Let us give you a round of applause, okay? We have with us this evening Miss Rodeo Washington, Katie Garfield. Yeah. And Miss Rodeo Montana, Jordan Han, and and Miss Rodeo Oregon, Ashley Ziegler. And of course, we have our own Ellensburg Rodeo Court. Let's hear it for Queen Elizabeth Shenier and Princess Chelsea Foreman. Have I forgotten anything? Terry, how am I doing? Okay? Well, we have a pre-induction program tonight because we're going to revisit an induction. And we've been doing that lately. We've been taking 5 or 10 minutes at the beginning of the induction and revisiting some former inductions and just once again casting a spotlight on some individuals who we've inducted in the past. And in this case, and go ahead and show us an image of Everett Bowman here. And Everett Bowman was inducted into the Ellensburg Rodeo Hall of Fame in 2004. And we weren't able to have family members there at that time. And fortunately, we do tonight have 2 family members here. And I just want to tell you a little bit about Everett Bowman, and then I want to introduce his granddaughter, who's going to tell you a story. And those of you who know rodeo history know that this is a legendary name in the history of North American rodeo. A Southwesterner, Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico, Bowman was a timed event competitor. And he was a great cowboy, great to the tune of 7 world titles. And they were all in timed events, 1 steer roping, I think calf roping titles, and also bulldogging titles, 7 world titles. And that then leads to world all-around titles, 2 world all-around titles. He did very well in Ellensburg in the timed events. He won the calf roping. He won the bulldogging. He won 2 Ellensburg all-arounds. And there's only 3 or 4 individuals that have won more than 1 Ellensburg all-around. Tom Ferguson, of course, and Bill McMacken, and Trevor Brazil, and Joe Beaver. So he's an elite company. And we inducted him in 2004, but Rochelle Bowman is here tonight. And I wanted her to get up for a second, if you would. Would you come on up here, ma'am? Let's give this lady a round of applause. And she's going to tell you a little bit about Everett Bowman.
So not only was he a great cowboy, he also started the Cowboys Turtle Association, which then became the RCA and is now the PRCA. So back in the day, my grandpa rounded up the cowboys and started a union, and they were going to protest until they got paid properly back in Madison Square Garden. So he started what is the PRCA today, basically. And another little story I wanted to tell you is I have this picture of the first horse trailer. So my grandpa was one of the first cowboys who ever hauled his horse to a rodeo. And in order to do that, he had one of his brothers make a horse trailer that he could attach to his 1926 Dodge pickup truck. And they loaded up a couple of horses, him and his brother Skeet Bowman, and they hit the rodeo road. So this picture is from 1926, and it's kind of interesting because the wheels in the wagon, or the horse trailer, are actually wooden spokes. So they had to stop in rivers and streams on the way and soak their wheels so they could keep traveling on the rough roads that were between Arizona and Cheyenne. So it took them a whole week to get there. But when they got there, my grandpa kicked butt and he won $300. But if you want to look at the picture later today and up close, you can just really see the true grit that went into rodeoing back in the day. I mean, it was rough riding. My grandma even went along, so 3 of them sat in the front of this truck and rodeoed all over. And my grandpa was able to buy 3 ranches with all his winnings back in the day. So that's how good he was. So I hope you enjoy it, and thank you.
Good job.
So we My grandma saved all the newspaper clippings as well, and I still have the book. It's a scrapbook of all the stories of the rodeo days, and I brought the book, and it's sitting over there on the table if you want to look at that later. Thank you so much.
And we'll leave this picture up. So and incidentally, after the banquet, we're going to have autographs. The bar will remain open, and you'll have a chance to look at this photograph. So this could go on for a while. I mean, and we hope you'll stick around and look at this. And thanks so much, ladies, for coming tonight. That was great. Well, to introduce to you, and I know many of you know Judy and Dan Ackley, but we want to bring to the stage a member of our board who's a longtime arena director here at the rodeo, doctor of veterinary medicine, and himself a timed event competitor, Dr. Ken McCrae.
Thank you, Mike. I'd just like to say a couple of words about the history professor. Mike Allen was raised here in Ellensburg. His dad was Stu Allen, who was a posse member. And Mike got a love for rodeo from that. And his concept of this Hall of Fame was entirely his. He put it all together. And he's kept it going all these years. And I think it's a wonderful thing. And we should give him a hand. As I look around the room, there's a lot of real cowboys here tonight. There's guys that know how to lift on that rein, and there's guys that know how to back in there and nod for their steer or calf. And there's guys that know how to jam their hand in that rigging and get the wrap in their bull rope. But everybody that's in this room tonight is part of that rodeo family because you're here, and I'm proud of all of you for being here. My real job tonight is to introduce some people that have been very, very important to the Ellensburg Rodeo for a long, long time. We hired Judy Ackley to be the rodeo secretary, I think in the first years of 1984, and she's continued with that job through 2006. And we were reminiscing a little bit tonight. She said, "Did that old rodeo office have a dirt floor?" And actually, it wasn't that bad, but it was pretty grim. It was right where the men's room is now in the new rodeo village, and it was had kind of a little white paint building. It got kind of warm in there, and that's one of the only times I knew Judy to be a little bit testy. It was because I was kind of in charge of her a little bit in those days, and all Bob Swaim needed was a kind of a coffee can to spit his chew in. But when Judy got there, she had to have a window, air conditioner in her window, and she insisted on it. And there wasn't very good power to that old building, so we had quite a bit of trouble with that. But anyway, we hired Judy in 1984, and she came well recommended. She had been a rodeo secretary around the Northwest for quite a while then. She had some roots in the Kittitas Valley. She was here as a young gal for a while and knew a lot of people. And I was acquainted with her for a little bit from my participation in rodeos. So anyway, we hired her, and she turned out to be a pretty wonderful thing for the Ellensburg Rodeo. And for the next 22 years, I think it was, why she was our rodeo secretary. And that's a job that takes many, many, many details. And she was on top of everything all the time. She has to handle all the money, take all the entry fees, prize money that the rodeo added, write all the cowboys' checks, in charge of all the drawing. And she did all that with good humor and a sense of humor that's made some of the judges a little bit wary of her sometimes. She had a side that would have some practical joke to it, and so she might jack up the judge's car so he couldn't drive away or something like that. And she made the whole experience a lot of fun for all of us. And I had to work fairly closely with her for all those years, and I was always awed by her master of every detail that it took to be a rodeo secretary. And there's some of those long nights that she put in when we were trying to figure out which horses were going to be in the finals and so forth. And she took it all with a lot of good humor. And in the early years, she did all that all by herself. But in later years, while the Ellensburg Rodeo grew to the point where she had to have a little help, and she had an assistant or two. But anyway, she's been a wonderful thing for us, and we're very proud to have had her. Now, Dan came along as sort of a package deal. He was with Judy, and so he volunteered to do whatever we needed. Well, it turned out we needed quite a bit. And Dan took care of all of it. He's over the years he's been he always has judged the non-PRCA events. He's been the flagger for the county calf roping, and he's been the judge for the wild cow milking since he first came here. Dan had a good deep background in rodeo. He was one of the contending bulldoggers in the late 70s. He made the finals, I think, in 77, 78, and 79. So he was no slouch as a steer wrestler. But his main job here was just to be an all-around good guy and help us out wherever we needed it. And he's done every job that we could hand him. In some years, he's even had to split the bulldoggers, and he knew which bulldoggers were riding which horse, so he did the splits because it got too much for our shoot boss at the time. But anyway, Dan is and still working to this day. He'll be out in the arena at the 2010 Ellensburg Rodeo, helping out just like he always has. I could probably go on for a long time, but I think what I'll do right now is say, Dan and Judy, please come up here and become part of the history of the Ellensburg Rodeo. You're in the Hall of Fame.
This is a great honor, one that I didn't think she'd be here today to receive this honor, so thank you very much.
Well, boy, that made it hard for me to talk. This is one night I'll never forget. It's a great honor to be a part of the hall. I thank my friends for being here and for my family. They mean so much to me. And for my husband, who's always there and always has been. I just would like to thank everybody for being my friends. Thank you very much.
Congratulations, Judy and Dan. To introduce Eddie Akridge to you, we've got another Hall of Fame board member. You all know him as a horseshoer and a timed event competitor in the PRCA, and an all-around good guy, and someone who I just love to hear him talking about horses. And I've enjoyed his speeches at these Hall of Fame banquets. And so to do this Eddie Acreage introduction, Jack Wallace.
Thank you, Mike. Eddie Acreage was born January 8th, 1929 in Pampa, Texas. He was born into a rodeo family. His dad was mainly a timed event hand. And Eddie actually did some timed events when he first started out, too. For some of you old-timers, June Ivory was a secretary, as Judy knows. She lived in Pampa, Texas also, and Eddie was telling me the other day that him and her played Annie Annie over when they were little kids. So then he moved to Midland, Texas, where he rodeoed out of most all of his career. Later on, he moved to Hesperia, California, where he owned a dude ranch. He still rodeoed out of California. Eddie won 3 World's Championships in the bareback riding, 53, 54, and 55. And he endured a few injuries after that. He laid out for a little while. 1959, he decided he'd try to pursue another championship. He had a bad leg. Doctors told him, excuse me, probably wouldn't ride again. But through true determination and courage, he did. He went on. And he won his 4th World Championship in 1961. There's only 2 other bareback riders that have won more championships than him. One of them is Joe Alexander, and he is in the Ellensburg Rodeo Hall of Fame. Actually, in 1953, he won 2 world titles. The International Rodeo Association were a smaller scale than the RCA, but Eddie also won a championship in that league, so to speak. In Ellensburg, he won the bareback riding in 1951 and 53. He won the bareback and the saddle bronc and the all-around in 1956. And in 1956, they had a special bronc riding. They took the top 5 riders from the regular rodeo. They put up $400, and Eddie won that bronc riding, and that actually wasn't his specialty, but there were some, the good bronc riders that were entered at that rodeo. And that year, he nearly didn't win the all-around because they had announced that Billy Hogue was the winner of the all-around. After closer tabulations, they found out that Eddie actually, in fact, did win the all-around. He won it by $80 in 1956. He started his rodeoing when he was 16, kind of going against his father's wishes. 1945, hitchhiked, got there any way he could, on the trucks or on the train, and he won Yuma, Arizona in 1948. And he went on to Tucson, and he went to pay his entry fees, and the president of the RCA at the time, he says, "Hey, son, you're going to have to join here." And Eddie wasn't sure, so he went back to the back of the line and he decided he would do it. He went up there and paid his dues and entered. And he told me that they didn't announce the scores in those days, so nobody knew who won what. And later on, some of the guys were hanging out and said, "Did anybody hear who won the rodeo?" Somebody yelled, "Yeah," he said, "some guy named Eddie Acreage took our money." $940, and he thought he was in tall cotton and on his way. So he said that the $940 was the most money he'd ever seen. And the success continued. A year later, he won the all-around title at the Calgary Stampede, the world's largest rodeo. Then came 1953. Acreage rode away with the all-around championship at Pendleton. And then he went on to win the three world championships, and then plus the one in 1961. 1953 was capped by two of his biggest victories, Madison Square Garden and the Boston Garden. And that year, in 1955 was one of his biggest victories in front of 106,000 people at the Los Angeles Coliseum. Eddie said that money was never a driving factor in his rodeo career. You made just enough to get by on if you had a good year, so you didn't do it for the money. I did it for the love of rodeoing. Among his many side jobs was a stint as a musician. He picked up the guitar and gained a following by playing in hotel rooms after long days at the rodeo. It soon developed into something more. Everyone would come over to my room for the music, he said. Nobody would go to the bar then. So I was finally invited by hotel management to play the rooms. Music eventually became a major source of supplemental income for Eddie, with his 1963 song, One a Day Multiple Heartache, reaching the top 50 lists in the national charts. He would go on to pursue a career in music after his rodeo retirement in 1968, moving to Las Vegas and becoming a regular on the Strip. While he never gained the celebrity status of Gene Autry or Roy Rogers, he appreciated their contributions to the Western lifestyle. Here's a quote. It kind of got under my craw that they paid those singers so much more than they did us. But as long as they brought people into the rodeo, it was all right. Usually our inductees, we try to get some of their archives from them that we can leave in our Hall of Fame, hopefully to get into a museum like Mike was talking about. But Eddie and his wife, they bought a dude ranch out in California, and they had a fire one night. He was telling me the swimming pool had 2 hot water heaters in it, and one of them went out. The other one still had the pilot light going, and it blew up. He had a trophy case and all of his buckles, trophies, 18 saddles were up in ashes. So that was a tough one. I'm going to read a bronc rider's prayer. I'm not very much of a poet, but I'm going to try this one. Dear Lord, I'm just a rodeo cowboy who's not called too often on the line, but I hope you'll really listen to this old bronc rider's prayer just this one time. Now, I'm not complaining or meaning to whine, because really, things down here are going along just fine. Why, I want to thank you, and I'm happy and tickled as pie for the good ones I've rode when I was in my prime. Why, there was Golden Rule, Pretty Sock, Big Three, Nobody's Darling, Pinocchio, Black Hawk, Mayday, and that mighty little horse they called Try Me. Why, I'll never forget that night in Portland, Oregon, when I rode Christensen Brothers' famous Skid Row Sioux. And Lord, that's just to name a few. So when it comes my time to trade this old body for one of another kind, how happy I'll be to just hand the head to him and spur and ride one of those mighty bucking horses. Mighty bucking horses you'll have way up there on high. No, I don't want to stroll those golden streets. It's just arena dust. I want to get all over my feet. So if you'll let me open chute gates or pick up flanks, that will be fine. But I beg you, Lord, with tears in my eyes, just let me be around somewhere when it's rodeo time. This leads into one of Eddie's Hall of Fame inductions into the Texas Hall of Fame in 2002. He was asked if they could elect him into the Hall of Fame, and he said, if you'll put my brother in, who was a very good hand in his own right, he says, I'll do it. This poem, or this Lord's Prayer, was written by his brother, J.R., who had a horse rear over on him, and it broke his back, and he was in a wheelchair for 40 years. And so in 2002, Eddie and J.R. were both elected into the Texas Hall of Fame. Eddie was inducted into the Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame the very first time, the inaugural induction, 1979. He was one of the original guys in there. He was voted into the National Cowboy Hall of Fame in Oklahoma City in 1999. He's voted into those halls of fame, and we're very proud, and I'm very honored that I was able to do his induction, because I felt I really got close to a fine gentleman, and he's got some family here tonight. And please join me in honoring and bringing Eddie Akridge into the Ellensburg Rodeo Hall of Fame.
Golly, that was a touching. I don't know what else to say. But Jack, thanks a million. Mr. Allen, you certainly have done a good job too. I appreciate that. First off, I'd like to take a little time here to introduce my sisters. They surprised me tonight. It kind of makes it pretty emotional. I didn't know they were going to be here. I checked in the hotel, and they come up and tapped me on the shoulders. My sister, just younger than I am, Ruby Faye. Please stand. She's from Las Vegas, Nevada. Next sister is Alta Grace. She's from Darzett, Texas. And my little sister, Jimmy Lee. She's from Channing, Texas. Also like to introduce my son, Dale Ray. Stand up, Dale. Well, it's certainly an honor to be inducted into the hall here in Ellensburg, Washington. Came here many, many times and was always pretty successful. And I always thought of Ellensburg kind of a home place to come to. And I certainly want to thank all the committee people that voted me in for the hall. It was really, really an honor. And I appreciate you very much. And I'd also like to mention the choking up here. The Nason family, Nason and Veronica family that helped start the Ellensburg Rodeo. Let's all give them a big hand. And thank you so much for everything.
Congratulations, Eddie. Thanks for coming up. To speak on behalf of the Nathan and Veronica family, I'm also going to call upon a board member of the Ellensburg Rodeo Hall of Fame. You all know her as a former princess of the Ellensburg Rodeo, right? She's a local businesswoman. She's a graduate of this university, and with her husband Larry has raised 2 fine daughters, one of whom is Miss Rodeo USA. And she also has a special connection to this induction. And so to introduce this great Kittitas Valley family, please welcome Julie Verdon.
Good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to share some of the history about this pioneer family with you. The members of the Nason and Aronica families trace their ancestry to Ojai, the great warrior chief of the Kittitas Band of the Northwest Plateau Indians. The family first came to the Kittitas Valley as hunters and gatherers, establishing encampments on the valley's western and eastern rim to gather camas roots and berries, fish for trout and salmon, and hunt for deer and elk. In the early 20th century, Ojai's daughters, Sayenwat, I always get that wrong, Sayenwat Ojai, encamped on the side of the Ellensburg Rodeo grounds. There's a photo of Sayenwat's teepee at the foot of Craig's Hill in the northwest corner of the grounds. You can see that photo right over there. Raised near Kashmir as a Wenatchee Indian, Ida Joseph, Sayenwat's granddaughter, returned to her ancestral home at the age of 17 to marry John So Happy Nason. In the early 1900s, they settled on land that was allotted to them by the federal government to Johnny's grandfather, Charlie. That is in the mouth of the Nanum Canyon, where the family ranch still stands today. Their children were Helen, Charles, William, Minnie, John, and Joanne. And we have a whole bunch of people here, and I was just wondering how many are of Helen's descendants. Can you raise your hand? Good. And how about Minnie's? Do you have any of Minnie's? John? All right. And Joanne? Good. Welcome. Thank you for coming. Because of the close ties to the Yakima Indian Nation, the Nasons were on the forefront of Indian involvement in the 1923 creation and subsequent development of the Ellensburg Rodeo. From the beginning, Indians have played a threefold role. First, the Indians always encamped near the rodeo grounds, recreating a teepee village like those of their hunter and gatherer forebears. Second, the Yakima's Indians, cowboys, and cowgirls have competed in the rodeo. And third, and perhaps the most important, the Yakimas perform the ritual which commences every Ellensburg rodeo. The rodeo begins with Indians performing traditional dancing in the arena. Then, as the announcer tells his story to the rodeo crowd, mounted Yakimas horsemen ride down Craig's Hill into the arena and across the arena floor. The announcer tells of the Indians' annual trek to the Kittitas Valley each fall. As that trek is acted out, the Indians ride down Craig's Hill. They enter the rodeo arena and pass before the crowd, riding fully adorned in tribal dress. Only after this ritual does the first bareback bronc bust out of the chute and the Ellensburg Rodeo begins. Near the Nason Ranch in Caribou Creek, Indians from Wenatchee, Snoqualmie, Wanapum, and Kittitas bands fashioned a flat track race to race their ponies, a custom that made its way into the first 1923 Ellensburg Rodeo. The Nasons participated in all the early rodeos in the Indian encampment, performing native dancing, riding in the rodeo parade, the opening ritual, and performing in the night dance pageant, Spirit of the West. And that was in a 2006 Ellensburg Rodeo Hall of Fame inductee. Ida Nason rode her horse to victory on the first Ellensburg Rodeo squaw race, while husband Johnny won the war bonnet race. These two races were given their names by non-Indian people. John, an early member of the Kittitas Ropers, competed in county roping events. In 1929, Ida and Johnny's daughter Helen was crowned the queen of the Ellensburg Rodeo. Her sister Minnie was the princess. There was a photo taken of these two girls sitting on the side of a creek as a promotion for the Ellensburg Rodeo that year. There's a bookmark on your table, courtesy of the Ellensburg Public Library, for each one of you to have. The sisters later married the Cleveland brothers, Mose and Sleepy, members of the Colville tribe who also raced horses. As the 20th century progressed, the Nason family and their descendants continued to participate in the Ellensburg Rodeo, dancing in the Indian Village and Rodeo Arena and riding in the parade. Following John's death, Ida married Tony Aronica. I think that's how I got this job, because Alan's other half of his relatives are the Aronicas, and that's how I'm related to him. So following Johnny's death, Ida married Tony, and Ida and Tony had a son, Alan, and he encamped and danced in the rodeo throughout the 1950s and 60s. In late 1980, Alan began to work with Rex Buck, a Wanapum band elder, and others to coordinate the Indian Village encampment, dancing, and other Indian activities. Now, as an elder of his people, Alan worked with the Rodeo Board and Yakima Indian Nation to coordinate the Indian participation in the Ellensburg Rodeo. Like his half-brother, Charlie, Alan is a decorated U.S. Army combat veteran. Local historian, Ellensburg Rodeo Hall of Fame board member Bertha Morrison grew up on the Nanum and has many memories of the Nason family. And she said she went to school at the Upper Nanum School with Minnie and Charlie until the 7th grade. She recalls their father, Johnny Sr., served in the Upper Nanum School Board. And Bertha Morrison also recalled how Johnny Sr. loved to raise and train his race horses. My brothers and sisters rode for Johnny in the rodeo flat race, she remembered. The Nasons are a very important family in the history of the Kittitas County. She herself was a pioneer rodeo family inducted in 1997. As Ida Nason grew old, Alan joined local historians to preserve her stories and tradition. A documentary film recorded the memories of her growing up in the Kittitas Valley. The movie Everything Changed was aired on PBS television. Many of you had watched that up on the big screen, clips of that. Ida died in 1992 and is buried in the family graveyard atop the sagebrush-covered hill in the northeast corner of the ranch. Today, hundreds of descendants of Chief Ojai are spread across the Pacific Northwest and American West, all with important ties to the Ellensburg Rodeo. It is with great pleasure and honor to present the Nason Aronica family with this plaque and introduce them into the Ellensburg Rodeo Hall of Fame. I would like to introduce Janice Cleveland, daughter of Helen Nason Cleveland and Alan Aronica, as they accept this award on behalf of the family.
I want to thank everybody from the board that nominates. It's truly an honor. I'd like to introduce my niece. I am the uncle of this beautiful young woman here. This is the oldest daughter of my sister, Helen, who was the queen in 1929. She's presently wearing the dress that my sister wore, and that dress has got a history on it older than I am. The dress was passed down from great-great-grandma. It was one of Alhai's, and that dress has been back, and it was worn during the signing of the Treaty of 1855. So the dress is really... I know tonight, if my mother was here, she'd be very proud. Because as she said, everything changed. This is truly a great honor because it helps preserve our family history and the family ties to this valley and the rodeo grounds, because that was great-grandma's quarters, and she tried to pass that on to all of her kids, grandkids, and great-great-grandchildren. Because we have such a large family, I wouldn't introduce all of them, because as you can see, we've got quite a few here, and there's a lot of them that haven't got here yet, but they've come all the way from California. We have some of my nephews living in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and we turned this into a family reunion because we haven't had a reunion since my mom's memorial. And so we decided that this was the time. So everybody just come in, and I want to thank all of my family that traveled so far and would show their presence. I want to thank the neighbors and stuff that have come because it's truly an honor. I'll tell you, I don't know, like I said, we're not, our family has always been involved in the rodeo in one way or another. My rodeo events evolved closest around my neighbor, Tuffy Morrison. We usually help do his spring branding. And that's where I get a little bit roughed up now and then. But I got to tell you another story. I mean, when we was younger, we was on the Indian family, and usually there was just one Indian running around with a whole bunch of cowboys. And I was told there was going to be a lot of cowboys here tonight, so I brought a lot of Indians just so our backs were covered. So I gotta tell you one more story. I'm surprised they haven't got nominated because I'm probably the only guy that got kicked out of the Ellensburg Rodeo in 1966 for trying to be a real Indian. I don't know whether I should tell you this story or not because I don't know where it'll end up, but in 1966, they kept telling us they wanted real Indians, and of course, at one time, there was only a couple of us Indians here at that time, and my partner that I ran around with, by the name of Mud Walker, we was always told that we wasn't real Indians, you know, and so we really wanted to be real Indians. And we would ask them, and we'd ask some of our elders, and they would tell us, that's not the Indian way. So we would ask them, please show us or tell us, and they wouldn't tell us. So one day during the parade, we got held up on the main rodeo thing. It was really hot, and for some reason we sat there for I don't know how long, and we was in buckskin, and we was right in front of the college where they put that camera, and we're sitting there, and all of a sudden I look up on the college lawn, and that was just the beginning and starting of kind of that hippie movement. And there was a young man standing up there on that lawn right there in front of the college. And he had long blonde hair, clear down to his waist. He had his arms around this beautiful girl. He's hugging and he's kissing on her. And we're on our horses in the parade line. And all of a sudden I looked over at Mud's face, and we never said a word. And Mud was dressed up, and he had his war paint on. He had a big knife. And I'm thinking, oh, gosh, I can see it coming now. But we never said a word. We jumped off of our horses, and our horses were pretty good. Their reins stayed right there, and they didn't move. And we run across that thing, and I let out a war whoop and jumped up and grabbed that guy's hair right by the back and just come up like that, and I pulled it up, and Mud come running behind me with his knife and went, "Ew!" And he cut it off. And we had to really run fast because the parade started moving. We jumped on our horses and we took off. And about that time, Ed Dahlquist was coming down the road. He was our Indian director, and we could hear the words in. We got kicked out for being Indians. So, with that, I'll close. Thank you.
I think it's a great honor tonight for Nason's family, for all of us. Please stand. There's a lot of us here, a lot of us scattered all over the U.S., so thanks a lot. I think it's a great honor that we're being inducted into the Ellensburg Hall of Fame.
Thanks very much, folks. I've never heard that story before. Keeps getting better and better, right? I'm not going to try to follow that. You know, this has been a wonderful induction, and thank you so much, all of you, for coming, and Eddie Akridge and your family, and Dan and Judy, and you know, it's not over yet. I'd like to invite all the inductees to sign some autographs. Folks have their programs. We're going to keep this party going for a while. The bar is going to remain open. I thank you all for coming. This has been a wonderful induction, and thank you all so very much. And let's go rodeo now. Thanks very much.